I've been dating my boyfriend for almost 3 years, and the relationship is great in every way, except when it comes to intimacy. He is normally very respectful of me in the bedroom, but has crossed the line 3 specific times. The last time was a few weeks ago, and it has me questioning if I want to continue being in this relationship. For context, I have a chronic pain condition called interstitial cystitis, and intimacy is one of my main triggers. That is, having intimacy can cause painful flares that last anywhere between a week to 2 months. I developed interstitial cystitis about 3 months into our relationship. So we went from having a very active intimacy life to decreasing our frequency. When I'm not flaring, we have intimacy. When I am, we do not. But I try to make up for it by getting very creative in the bedroom and essentially hitting all the bases right before the home run. The first time he crossed my boundaries was about 6 months into our relationship. He was feeling me up, but I communicated that I was flaring. We were getting very into it, and he asked if we could have intimacy. I said no, but wasn't trying to unalive the vibe. So I tried to say it very seductively. He asked again. I said no again. On the fourth no, I felt something go inside of me, and he started thrusting. I freaked out and jumped off of him. I cussed him out and went home. We took a break for about a week and ended up reconnecting. He gave what I thought was a very genuine apology and promised it would never happen again. And it didn't, until about a year later. I had just gotten over one of my longest flares, which lasted a little over a month. I was helping him move, and he suggested we shower at his old place because the new place didn't have water set up. I was hesitant at first because showering normally leads to intimacy, and I didn't want to trigger another flare after I had just ended one. I said yes to the shower, but only if we didn't have intimacy. He agreed. When we got in, we immediately started making out, which I was fine with. Then he asked for intimacy. I said no, very sternly this time, but he continued asking. By the 5th or 6th time I gave up and just had intimacy with him, it was horrible. I burst into tears after, and he asked what was wrong. When I told him, he was very apologetic but said, next time, just say no. Which, come on. He was perfect for another year until a few weeks ago. This time I wasn't flaring, but I had just gotten on Zoloft, and it ended the life of my intimacy drive. He and I hadn't done anything intimacy for almost 2 months. In a moment of vulnerability, I broke down and told him how the Zoloft was making me become repulsed by any form of intimacy. I cried about how not having an intimacy drive made me feel like a horrible partner. He sat there, listened, and cuddled with me. Then he started kissing me. I found this very weird since I literally just cried about not desiring any intimacy. He immediately asked to have intimacy. I was completely in shock and said no, but he continued asking. I do realize that in this moment I should have stood my ground and kept saying no, or just left his apartment entirely. But I had felt like such a bad partner that I gave in. The intimacy was once again horrible. When he finished and asked if something was wrong, I explained the situation to him, and he repeated the same line. Next time, just say no. I don't know what it was about this last time. Maybe it's because I wasn't flaring and just had no intimacy drive, but I have not been able to get it out of my head. The other 2 times I was able to forgive him and move on. But now every time I see him and he does as much as hold my hand, I get really anxious. I just want to know if I'm overreacting and if this is a normal part of a relationship, or if this is a serious problem. Almost forgot, I have in the past suggested opening up the relationship so that when I'm flaring and sometimes can't have intimacy for months at a time, he can get his needs met elsewhere. He has rejected it every time I've brought it up. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. The 3rd time sets off major alarm bells. It gives the impression that he gets turned on by having intimacy with you, and you specifically say you can't or don't want to. You just finished crying to him about not having an intimacy drive due to medication, and he immediately tries to initiate intimacy? This guy is treating you as a body he can have intimacy with and not as a person he loves. Comment 2. I bet that when you break up and find a non-predator, normal boyfriend, your intimacy drive will be just fine regarding Zoloft. Also, someone who understands your condition and isn't acting like a rapper will also help. Dump him now. This guy is sexually assaulting you and pretending like he doesn't understand it. Now for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. So, a lot has happened in the past week, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. After my last post, I decided to have a serious conversation with my boyfriend about our relationship and the boundaries that he keeps crossing. I thought it was going to be a straightforward talk, but it turned out to be anything but that. We sat down in his living room, and I started by telling him how much I care about him and how important our relationship is to me. I then explained how his actions have been affecting me, especially the last incident. I told him that I felt disrespected and that it was making me question our future together. He seemed to be listening intently, nodding along, and even apologized again. But then he said something that threw me off completely. He admitted that he had been feeling frustrated and neglected because of my condition and the lack of intimacy. He said he didn't know how to handle it, and that's why he kept pushing for intimacy. I was taken aback by his honesty, but I also felt a pang of guilt. I started to wonder if maybe I had been too hard on him. Maybe I hadn't been considering his needs enough. So, in a moment of weakness, I suggested opening up the relationship again. This time, he didn't reject it outright. He said he needed some time to think about it. A few days later, he came back to me and said he was willing to try an open relationship. I was relieved and thought this might be the solution to our problems. We set some ground rules and agreed to communicate openly about everything. I felt hopeful for the first time in a while. But things took a turn for the worse almost immediately. He started seeing someone else. And at first I was okay with it. I thought it would help take the pressure off our relationship. But then he started spending more and more time with her. He would cancel plans with me to be with her. And when we were together, he seemed distant and distracted. I tried to talk to him about it, but he brushed it off, saying I was overreacting. One night, I decided to surprise him by showing up at his place with his favorite takeout. When I got there, I found him with her. They were laughing and seemed so comfortable together. It felt like a punch to the gut. I left without saying anything, but the image of them together kept replaying in my mind. The next day, I confronted him about it. I told him how hurt I was and that I felt like he was prioritizing her over me. He got defensive and said that I was the one who suggested the open relationship in the first place. He accused me of trying to control him and said that he was finally happy for the first time in a long time. That's when I realized that I had made a huge mistake. I thought opening up the relationship would help us, but it only drove us further apart. The fallout from this has been brutal. We've been fighting constantly, and I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around him. I've been having more frequent flares, probably from all the stress, and he's been less supportive than ever. He even missed one of my doctor's appointments because he was with her. I feel like I'm losing him and it's tearing me apart. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship and how we got here. I remember when we first started dating, how attentive and caring he was. He would go out of his way to make me feel special, and I felt like I had found my soulmate. But things started to change after I developed interstitial cystitis. He became more distant and less patient. I tried to compensate by being more creative in the bedroom, but it never seemed to be enough. Looking back, I realized that there were red flags that I ignored. Like the first time he crossed my boundaries, I should have seen it as a sign of things to come. But I was so in love with him that I convinced myself it was a one-time mistake. Even when he did it again, I chose to forgive him because I believed in our relationship. I thought that if I just tried harder, things would get better. But now I see that I was wrong. His actions have shown me that he doesn't respect my boundaries or my condition. He's more concerned with his own needs than with my well-being. And the fact that he's found happiness with someone else while I'm struggling with my health is a clear indication that our relationship is not as strong as I thought it was. I've been talking to my friends and family about everything, and they've been supportive. They've been telling me that I deserve better and that I need to prioritize my own health and happiness. It's been hard to hear, but I know they're right. I've been putting his needs above my own for too long, and it's time for me to take care of myself. I'm still trying to figure out what my next steps are. Part of me wants to end things with him and move on, but another part of me is scared of being alone. I've invested so much in this relationship, and the thought of starting over is daunting. But I know that I can't keep living like this. I need to make a change for my own sake. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to invite my fiancé's drama queen grandmother to our wedding until she apologizes. This past weekend, we had my fiance's family visit, and it was an overall disaster. I have known her family since 2015. We recently bought a house and had an old college roommate move in to help out, since we have spare bedrooms. My fiancé and her sister had a small argument over her sister's behavior. They made up, and I assumed everything was fine. I was in the bathroom during the argument. With everything settled, we planned to go to dinner. My roommate and I drove her grandparents, and my fiancé drove with the remainder of the family. We split like this because we are the only two who know the parking lot, my fiancé and I. Her grandma was silent the entire drive. When we arrived at dinner, her grandma started glaring at all of us. She eventually refused to order and went to sit outside the restaurant. We assumed she wasn't feeling well and went back to the hotel, or was still upset about the argument. The following day, she refused to come to a family dinner I was preparing for all week. We figured she was still upset. We were annoyed by the rudeness and blatant disregard for all the work we put in, but we still had fun. She ended up staying at the hotel the remainder of the trip. The rest of her family continued to visit with us, and the trip ended on a happy note. The next day, I noticed that her grandma blocked my entire family on Facebook. We spoke to my future mother-in-law and got the real story. Apparently on the way to dinner, her grandma thought that our roommate and I are getting too friendly. She is somehow convinced that I'm going to leave my fiancé for our roommate, steal our house, and have my family help. My fiancé was shocked to the point of being speechless. When she was sitting outside the restaurant, she was near storming back in and accusing us in front of the entire restaurant. She has not spoken to us since and is apparently acting like everything is normal now that she's home. My fiancé's family have all been apologizing and assuring us that none of them think that is what's happening. I guess what really upsets me is the lack of care for the planning I put into the dinner, and that she thinks that lowly of me. I've never done anything to suggest that those are my intentions, and have been nothing but excellent to her granddaughter. What also upsets me is my grandma was so excited to see her grandma. My grandma's not doing well health-wise, and we don't know how much longer she'll be around. The disappointment in my grandma's face hurt me, knowing she wouldn't be able to visit with somebody she hasn't seen in years. My fiancé and I have talked and do not believe we've done anything wrong. We're currently holding her wedding invitation. I still really care for her other family members, until we get some kind of apology. If it were up to me, I'd cut all ties, but am willing to get over that for a day if my fiancé really wants her grandmother there. She's never been anything but kind to me, so this sudden shift is shocking. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Is it possible that grandma is slipping into dementia? If her behavior is out of the ordinary, I would be concerned about her mental state. My dad had Alzheimer's that started slowly with stuff like this. He would confront me about things that never happened. He also had to start calling his coworkers to ask for directions to get back to his shop on the same grounds of the company. Maybe hold off on your anger because her mind could be slipping. Sorry you're having grandma issues. It's difficult and it sucks. Best of luck with your wedding. Grandma will probably need a babysitter to keep an eye on her. I hope you don't exclude her. Comment 2. I understand this is upsetting, but I don't think you're being rational about this. She's an elderly woman, and this indicates there's some type of cognition problem. It shouldn't upset you what she thinks about you, because she's not thinking logically. It can be upsetting to have family members who have these types of issues, but a lot of people deal with it as relatives age. You need to be the bigger person here and the kinder person, and have some compassion. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since the last post. So, after the whole fiasco with my fiancé's grandma, things have been pretty tense. My fiancé and I decided to hold off on sending her wedding invitation until we got an apology. We thought it would blow over, but it didn't. Instead, it got worse. My fiancé's grandma started calling other family members, telling them her wild theories about me and our roommate. This led to some awkward phone calls and texts from her aunts and uncles, who were trying to figure out what was going on. It was exhausting having to explain ourselves over and over again. Last weekend, my fiancé's parents came over to talk. They were really apologetic and said they didn't believe any of the nonsense her grandma was spreading. They also mentioned that her grandma had a history of making up stories when she felt left out or ignored. Apparently, this wasn't the first time she had caused drama in the family. My fiancé was really upset to hear this, as she had always looked up to her grandma and never knew about this side of her. While we were talking, my fiancé's mom suggested that we have a family meeting to clear the air. We agreed, hoping it would help. We set up a Zoom call with her grandma and the rest of the family. It was a disaster. Her grandma doubled down on her accusations, saying she had seen the way we looked at each other and that she knew what was going on. My fiancé tried to reason with her, but it was like talking to a brick wall. The call ended with her grandma hanging up on us. After that, my fiancé was really down. She felt like her family was falling apart and it was all because of a misunderstanding. I tried to comfort her, but I was also feeling pretty hurt. I couldn't believe that someone who had always been kind to me could suddenly think so poorly of me. It made me question everything. In the midst of all this, my old college roommate, who had been staying with us, decided it was time to move out. He said he didn't want to cause any more trouble and felt like he was in the way. We were sad to see him go, but we understood. He found a new place pretty quickly, and we helped him move out last weekend. It was bittersweet, but we knew it was for the best. With him gone, things started to calm down a bit. My fiancé and I focused on our wedding plans and tried to put the drama behind us. But then, out of nowhere, we got a call from my fiancé's cousin. She said that her grandma had been telling people that she wasn't coming to the wedding because she didn't approve of our relationship. This was news to us, as we hadn't even sent out the invitations yet. We decided to confront her grandma in person. We drove to her house and asked her why she was spreading these lies. She got really defensive and said she was just looking out for the family. My fiancé broke down in tears, begging her to stop. Her grandma finally admitted that she was jealous of the attention we were getting and felt left out. She apologized, but it felt hollow. We left feeling more confused than ever. In the days that followed, my fiancé and I had some deep conversations about our future. We realized that we needed to set boundaries with her family, especially her grandma. We decided to go ahead with the wedding plans, but agreed that her grandma wouldn't be invited unless she made a genuine effort to make amends. As we were dealing with all this, I started thinking about my own family. My grandma, who isn't doing well health-wise, had been really excited to see my fiancé's grandma. The disappointment on her face when she found out they wouldn't be visiting together was heartbreaking. I decided to spend more time with her, knowing that our time together might be limited. It made me appreciate the family I have and the importance of cherishing those relationships. One night, while we were having dinner with my parents, my mom shared a story about her own wedding. She mentioned how her mother-in-law had caused a lot of drama, but they had managed to work through it. It made me realize that family conflicts are nothing new, and that we could get through this too. It gave me a sense of hope and determination to make things right. In the end, my fiancé and I decided to focus on the positive aspects of our lives. We have a beautiful home, supportive friends, and a wedding to look forward to. We agreed to take things one day at a time and not let her grandma's negativity overshadow our happiness. We also made a pact to communicate openly and honestly with each other, no matter what. So, that's where we are now. We're still dealing with the fallout from her grandma's accusations, but we're stronger for it. We've learned a lot about ourselves and our relationship, and we're determined to move forward together. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for cutting off my best friend after she called CPS? On my husband. I, 32 years old, female, have been married to my husband, 33 years old, male, for 8 years, and we have 4 kids, all between the ages of 7 and 1. My husband plays softball in a men's league with some of his coworkers. In a game 3 weeks ago, there was an incident where someone on the other team almost injured my husband by sliding into the base. The league has a strict no-contact policy during sliding. My husband just said, "What the hell?" to the other guy, who responded with a shove and attempted to punch my husband. He also called him a racial slur for people of Punjabi ethnicity. My husband punched him back and instantly knocked him to the ground, which resulted in an ambulance being called. My husband is a muscular person who is 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighs 200 pounds. He has been practicing combat sports since he was 20, so you can imagine the impact of his punch. Fortunately, someone had a video of the whole incident, which showed that the other guy started it. So my husband's punch was considered self-defense, and he didn't face any consequences. My husband has always been a very calm and composed person, but I always appreciated his ability to be physical when needed. So I didn't think too much of the incident and just made sure that he was okay, both mentally and physically. When this all blew over, I casually told my best friend, 32 years old, female, about what happened. However, something changed in her behavior towards me and our family in general. She used to tell me how lucky I was to have my husband, but now she says that my husband is a danger to me and our kids. She even offered to call Child Protective Services if I was afraid. She just seems to not understand that my husband has only ever made me feel safe and protected. He's an amazing husband and father. Recently, she has been behaving ridiculously. For example, one time, she was at our home when my husband got home from work. I've always hugged and kissed my husband, right when he gets home from work or anywhere else. However, that day, my best friend got mad when I did that and called it disgusting, despite having seen it happen many times. She has also shown up at our home randomly to check on me and the kids. Yesterday, she even sent my husband a text saying that he was a monster and the villain for sending someone to the hospital. A few hours later, she sent another message saying that I have been afraid of him ever since he punched that guy. My husband didn't take it seriously, but encouraged me to have a conversation with her to see what she wants. I don't understand her intentions at all. She just seems unnecessary and irrationally concerned for me and the kids. I spoke to her and she was just adamant that I need to leave my husband because he's not safe. How should I go about this situation? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. She is trying to sow seeds about how dangerous she feels your husband is, so you will actually leave him. Then she will swoop in and try to get with him. She is jealous because she knows how he is such a good man and she wants that for herself. She saw you give him affection after he came home, and she said it was disgusting. She wants to kiss and hug him, and she couldn't control her jealousy. Drop her like a heavy rock. Good luck. Comment 2. Your friend is going down a dangerous path and can get you guys in serious trouble. Cut all contact with her and ask her not to come over or contact you guys in any way. If she does try to contact you, file a police report and file it every time she tries to contact you to get a paper trail going. You will need this if she decides to call CPS or put you guys on blast on social media or something else. Good luck. Now, for the update, thanks for reading my last post. So, things have gotten even more complicated over the past few days. After my conversation with my best friend, I thought things would calm down, but they didn't. She continued to show up unannounced, and her behavior became more erratic. On the second day, she came over while my husband was at work and insisted on taking the kids out for ice cream. I was hesitant, but agreed, thinking it might give me some time to clear my head. When she returned, she had bought the kids new clothes and toys, which felt like she was trying to win them over or something. It made me really uncomfortable. Later that evening, my husband and I had a long talk about her behavior. He suggested that maybe she was going through something personal and projecting it onto our situation. I wanted to believe that, but her actions were starting to feel more invasive. The next day, she showed up again, this time with a pamphlet for a women's shelter. She handed it to me and said, "Just in case you need it." I was furious and told her that she was crossing a line. She left in a huff, but not before saying, "You'll thank me one day." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what she said and why she was so convinced that my husband was a danger. I started to doubt myself, wondering if I was missing something. My husband noticed I was restless and asked what was wrong. I told him about the pamphlet, and he was visibly upset. He said he felt like she was trying to tear our family apart. We decided that I needed to set some firm boundaries with her. The following day, I called her and told her that she needed to stop coming over unannounced, and that her behavior was making us uncomfortable. She didn't take it well and accused me of being brainwashed by my husband. She said she was only trying to help, and that I was making a huge mistake by staying with him. I hung up the phone, feeling more confused than ever. That evening, my husband received another text from her, this time saying that she had contacted Child Protective Services, CPS, because she was genuinely concerned for the safety of our kids. My heart sank. I couldn't believe she had actually done it. My husband tried to reassure me, saying that we had nothing to hide and that CPS would see that our home was safe and loving. But I was terrified of what this could mean for our family. The next day, a CPS worker showed up at our door. They interviewed both of us separately and then spoke to the kids. It was a humiliating and stressful experience. The worker seemed professional and understanding, but the whole process left me feeling exposed and vulnerable. After they left, I broke down in tears. My husband held me and said we would get through this together, but I could see the strain it was putting on him too. In the aftermath of the CPS visit, I started to think about my friendship with her and how it had come to this point. We had been friends since college, and she had always been a bit overprotective, but I never thought it would escalate to this level. I remembered a time when she had a bad breakup and became obsessed with the idea that all men were dangerous. She had even tried to convince me to break up with my husband back then, saying that no man could be trusted. I had brushed it off as her being emotional, but now I wondered if those feelings had never really gone away. I also thought about my own upbringing. My parents had a tumultuous relationship, and I had always promised myself that I would create a stable and loving home for my own family. My husband's calm and composed nature had been a big part of why I fell in love with him. He was my rock, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. But now, my best friend's actions were making me question everything. As the days went on, the tension in our home grew. My husband and I started to argue more, mostly about how to handle the situation with her. He wanted to cut her out of our lives completely, but I felt guilty about abandoning her when she clearly thought she was helping. It was a no-win situation, and it was taking a toll on our marriage. One evening, after another heated argument, my husband left to go for a drive and clear his head. I sat alone in the living room, feeling more isolated than ever. I picked up my phone and saw a message from her. It said, "I know you're scared, but you need to do what's best for your kids. Leave him before it's too late." I threw my phone across the room in frustration. The next day, my husband and I sat down for a serious talk. He said he couldn't take the constant stress and that it was affecting his work and our relationship. He suggested that we take a break from each other to figure things out. I was devastated, but agreed that maybe some time apart would help us see things more clearly. So he moved out to stay with a friend for a while, and I was left to manage the kids and the house on my own. It was incredibly hard, and I felt like I was failing at everything. My best friend continued to reach out, but I ignored her messages. I needed space to think and figure out what to do next. In the end, I realized that my best friend's actions had forced me to make a choice I wasn't ready to make. My marriage was in jeopardy, and I didn't know if we could come back from this. I felt betrayed by someone I had trusted for years and unsure of what the future held for my family. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day,